Let's move across the big pond, as the British call the Atlantic Ocean, and look at American colonial corrections. Now, anytime you see that word colonial, that means we were still subjects of the British Crown. We had not yet overthrown our country and made our own government. So we're still British subjects here. And of course, it follows that American colonial corrections would be based on English punishments, because we brought with us what we knew from England. So we had the corporal and capital punishments that we brought with us from England. We agreed that corporal punishments were punishments of the body or physical punishments, capital punishments, death penalty. So we had the stocks and pillories. Okay, the stocks were for lesser offenses. You were seated with your legs, your feet immobilized in a frame, out in usually town square, because both were intended to be very humiliating. They were public punishments. They were intended to be uncomfortable and humiliating. And there you are sitting in town square for a number of hours in whatever weather there was. We didn't care. You're an offender. If it's hot, if it's cold, you didn't get a drink of water, you didn't get lunch. If you had to use the bathroom, well, we said, go ahead. And then you got to sit in your own waste. The pillories were a little worse. Well, in the stocks, too, people would come by and they would throw stuff at you. It was part of the humiliation. You were encouraged to throw things at offenders. So, you know, road apples, right, horse pucky, rotten vegetables, fruits, eggs, rocks. Now, if you were in the pillar or the stocks like this you see here, your hands are free, so at least you can ward it off. In the pillories, though, there you are, immobilized in a wooden frame such as that, and you're standing now, which is a lot more uncomfortable. You'll agree that sitting for a number of hours is pretty uncomfortable. Your rear end kind of goes numb, and your legs start to go numb, and your back starts to hurt, and it's pretty unpleasant. Imagine standing like that for hours and hours on end, in whatever weather. No food or water, no bathroom breaks, and townspeople can come by and throw stuff at you, and now you can't even ward it off. And what was worse, sometimes they would nail the ears of the offender to the wood of the pillory. And when it was time to come out of the pillory, they wouldn't unnail your ears. They would either cut them off, or if you were lucky, they would just raise up the top and tear the nails through your ears, leaving your ears dogged. So for the rest of your life, people would know that you had been in the pillory. And this was for minor offenses. Then we had the branks, a kind of a head-shaped face cage, I guess, with a bit that went in and immobilized the tongue. If the offender wearing the branks tried to move their tongue, it would be cut by the bit. And the ducking stools, where we would put a chair on a lever over a body of water, and we would duck the offender into the water and hold them under a little bit, kind of like waterboarding. Yeah, old school waterboarding. Blah, 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 blah. Both the branks and the ducking stools were almost exclusively for women. Those were punishments for women. And for scolding, for doing a lot of other things that annoyed men, apparently. They could get the branks or the ducking stool. Flogging. You can see the scarring on the back of this man here, because when you hit somebody with one of those big bull whips, Indiana Jones, those old movies there, when you hear him crack the whip, you hear that whip cracking sound, that is the tip of the whip moving so fast it's breaking the sound barrier. That's what that crack noise is. Now, I'm not schooled in exactly how fast that is, but I think it's somewhere around 500-600 miles an hour. Right in there. Now imagine getting hit on your back with something moving that fast, and it does. It rips out strips of flesh. And so you see some really intense scarring. Branding. We heat up a hot iron, a hot piece of metal, until it's glowing red, and we burn a mark to distinguish the crime that you have committed. So T in this case for thief. For the rest of this man's life, he's got a T on his hand, and everybody can see that he's got sticky fingers. You better look out for him because he was a thief. And the gallows, right? Hanging people. Now you might say, well, that's not a terrible way to die, but you know, the science of hanging people wasn't really exact back then, nor did they really care. So often what would happen is the person's neck wouldn't break, and they would dangle, flopping around, until they slowly strangled to death, which can take several minutes. Or they dropped a little bit too far and yanked their head off. So even that wasn't quick and easy in most cases. We see here in the picture, the caption reads, "Historical punishments were both painful and shameful. Stocks and pillories were used both as physical punishment and to ridicule offenders in front of their fellow townspeople in the hopes they would end their criminal ways." So deterrence, specific deterrence and general deterrence right there. You go, ooh, I wouldn't want that to happen to me.